This week, we will explore a topic that is very important and has come up countless times, in fact. A question that comes up often, and many a time people don't have a clear understanding of what we mean or what is meant by the term kamma or karma. Oftentimes people have wrong interpretations, wrong concepts, wrong definitions. And many a time people put words in the Buddha's own mouth to explain what they think kamma should mean, when in fact it has nothing to do with what Lord Buddha meant or explained it as. Kamma is something that is intentionally done, intentionally committed by the person. It comes, therefore, from our behavior. And so we'll be exploring Kamma, and it will be from the middle-length discourses this time that we'll be visiting. But before that, I want to tell a story pertaining to the theme of today, which is Kamma. One time, a king by the name of, I think his name was Kosala, he approached the Buddha with his retinue, and he looked exhausted, he looked perplexed, he looked not himself, basically. And he was shaking his head, just, kind of lost in his thoughts. And the Buddha asks him, and he says, Maharaja, what is it? What is it that's troubling you? And he says, Bhante, I just came back from the court where we had to take care of some business that was not so pleasant for me to engage in. And he's like, what do you mean? The Buddha asks. And he says, well, there was a very, very wealthy man who didn't have any children. He didn't have anyone, not even like a long lost cousin or an old aunt or a child, a great grandchild somewhere. Nobody. But he had tremendous wealth. So what we were doing, because there was no inheritor, there were no heirs to his inheritance to get it, all that wealth and treasure, in a sense. The court then has to come in and take all that, because there's no one to, where it would be going to lawfully. So that's what we were doing, he says, Bhante. And it was just perplexing to see how all that wealth, he wasn't even enjoying it while he was alive. He says, do you see, Bhante, this man used to wear the worst rags. He would not buy for himself a decent meal. He would not even hire any attendants, any servants to take care of him in the house. So he lived alone, he ate alone, and he ate only crumbs, basically, to save money. And he had a lot of money, the king said. But the king was shaking his head, saying, how pathetic, how sad. This man didn't even live, didn't even enjoy the money, didn't even. And the Buddha smiles and says, do you know why, great king? And the king says, no, Bhante, could you tell me? And he says, this man, long time ago, used to be a wealthy man in ancient times. And one day, in that life, his wife approaches him and says, husband, there's this Pacceka Buddha coming by on his alms round. And the Pacceka Buddha, in case you don't know, is a Buddha, but he's a silent Buddha, a Buddha that does not teach. But it is a person who is a Buddha nevertheless. So he's approaching for his alms round. He's approaching with his bowl. And the wife says, could I offer him some food? And he, although he was stingy in that life also, for some reason, he's filled with some goodwill and a semblance of generosity. And he turns to his wife and says, yes, wife, go ahead and give him some food. Give him, in fact, lavish food, good food. And she gets excited. She's somewhat surprised. So she goes into the kitchen and they say, Bhante, could you hold on? So they get really nice food. Perhaps it was already prepared, but so instead of giving it to him, to the husband, or to have them eat it, she takes the lavish lunch and brings it out and offers it to the Pacceka Buddha. Now, after he sees the kind of food that's offered, he has second thoughts. He starts thinking, I don't know if that was a good idea. I mean, what is this man? Because for him, he doesn't see beyond his gold coins and the means to get them. So he's very practical, very financially savvy, and he's using those glasses of his of financial savviness, metaphorically speaking, and says, what is this renunciant, this bhikkhu going to do with after he's eaten all this meal that I gave him? He's going to go and sit under a tree and maybe rest. And that's the end of that. What am I going to benefit out of this? Now, he says, if I had given that food, that same food, to my employees, to my workers, to my servants in the household, 10 of them would have, in fact, indulged themselves with that food. It would be enough for so many people. And what were they going to do after eating? They were going to show me much more respect. They were going to do better work. They're going to be excited to really take on the responsibilities that I've given them. So I will have a good return on the food that I gave. So in essence, what is happening in his mind? Despite the fact that he was the one who told his wife to go ahead and offer the food, he was having second thoughts. He was having doubts. He was even having regrets. Nevertheless, the offering was made, right? Now, in that lifetime, he also had a brother, this man, a wealthy brother, equally wealthy. But he had a son, his brother. So he had a nephew, this man. Now he ponders and ponders and says, well, when my brother dies, where's that money going to go? To my nephew. My brother doesn't have anyone else. There's me. So guess what he does? He starts scheming, planning to kill his own nephew. And he does kill his nephew. Of course, his brother is so distraught. And in time, his brother also dies. The money goes to where? To whom? To him. So now he's doubly rich and wealthy. At the end of that life, the Buddha says, that man went straight to hell, into the worst compartments, the worst denizens of the worst places of the bottom of abysmal hell, where he stayed for a very long time. Very, very long time. Now, eventually, he trickles his way back upwards to a higher birth, and he becomes a human. To narrow the story down, to shorten it, he comes to that life, the same life where the king was saying, well, Bhante, this man died alone. And he says, given his actions, let's pick the action of him being generous with the Pacceka Buddha. Even the thought, initial thought, which instigated the wife to offer the food. Had he not said that, the food would not have been offered, perhaps, but it was offered. He was so wealthy in this life, he says. But there was regret. There was regret in his heart. I wish I didn't. I wish I gave it to my workers. That caused him to not enjoy even a single coin from the wealthy treasure trove that was his. He couldn't even enjoy his food. So you see, first was the loss of such a long time, plus the pain that one has to endure in the hell realms because of his actions, to deprive his own brother from his son and killing another being, his nephew, got him to go into the hell realms and stay there for a very long time. But eventually, because the action was directed towards a Pacceka Buddha, a truly noble being, even if you don't intend to do it, you still get the effect of it. In the presence of, in the lifetime of a sasana, when there's a Buddha, when there are the noble 8 category of noble beings, Sotapanna, Sakadagami, Anagami, and an Arahant, plus the Buddha, when that is still there, when that is still happening, or at least there's the Noble Eightfold Path being taught, the actions we commit, the generosity actions that have to do with offering things from our hearts to someone, within those categories, just the fact that they exist, even if it's not to those people, the time period itself multiplies the fruits of that pure action. So this was an action that was done towards a Pacceka Buddha. So the man still ended up being rich, incredibly rich, perhaps richer than the king himself. But he never enjoyed it because of the regret. So I wanted to share that story briefly because the sutta is somewhat on the longer side. So I finished translating this a couple of weeks ago. And it's a pertinent sutta. I have already done some years ago in the Sutta Exploration series, the Kammavibhaṅga Sutta. This is the Cūḻa, the shorter classification of Kamma. So this is Majjhima Nikaya 135. Majjhima Nikaya means the middle length discourses, 135. And it's from the Vibhaṅga Vagga, which is the section on breakdowns or classifications, expositions. And the sutta's name in Pali is Cūḻa Kammavibhaṅga Sutta, shorter classification on Kamma, which I translate as intentional actions. So let's begin. I have personally heard this. Once, while the Blessed One was living in Savatthi at Anathapindika's monastery in Jeta's park, the Brahmin student Subha, the son of Todaya, went and approached the teacher. After exchanging friendly and cordial greetings, he then sat to one side and, by addressing the Blessed One, asked his question. What is behind? What is the cause, O Master Gautama, whereby some human beings are born as inferior to others, while others are born as superior? What is behind? What is the cause, O Master Gautama, whereby some human beings end up having short lives, while others go on living up to an advanced age, and only die after having lived for a very long time? Why are some human beings weakly and prone to sickness, while others are not, living healthy lives without having many ailments? What is the reason, Master Gautama, that some are born ugly and unattractive in appearance, while others are beautiful and lovely? What is the reason that some are born into families and positions that are important and influential in society, while others are not, and thus live without any influence? What is behind? What is the reason, Master Gotama, whereby some human beings are born into wealth and affluence, while others are born into poverty, without the resources or means that others have? What is the reason that some humans are born into the lower caste families in society, while others are highborn into prominent and leading castes? Why are some human beings stupid and witless, while others are wise and discerning? And therefore, Master Gotama, what is behind it? What is the cause for some human beings to be born as inferior while others are born as superior? Very definitive questions. In fact, practical questions, decent questions, to the point type of questions that demand very clear answers. There's nothing haphazard about the Dhamma. There's no guesswork. We have to come back to the Buddha's teachings, the original teachings, to see this very matter-of-fact interchange that goes on between students and their queries, their questions, and the Buddha giving the answers proper to these things. It's not open-ended, in a sense. It's very clear in this time period where we live, where it could be anything. No, that's not Dhamma. There's nothing mystical, in a sense, also, about that. It's very pragmatic. So let's see how Lord Buddha answers these questions. Young pupil, beings are the owners of their intentionally committed actions, their Kamma. They are the inescapable inheritors of their Kamma. For Kamma is their matrix and origin. Kamma is their ancestral bloodline. Kamma is their refuge and resort. You can unravel this into an entire library. Therefore, it is one's own intentional actions that lead one to be born as inferior, while others are born as superior. All that is due to the individual's Kamma, one's own true and binding inheritance. Binding. You might have a very wealthy cousin or uncle or someone who leaves you, let's say, part of their wealth or the whole inheritance. That's still not yours. It's not binding. Even if it's written by 300-400 lawyers being witnesses to it, being signed, it means nothing ultimately, because some powerful person could come in and pull the rug from under you and you won't get a dime of that. That's because we live in this world. However, Kamma is for certain. There's no way that you will not get that inheritance, good or bad action, that is, that you've done, you've committed. It's there. It's under your, it has your name on it. It's more reliable than your own parents, your own bloodline, your own race, your own anything you can think of that people hold valuable as an identifying marker of who they are, where they come from. Nope. Ultimately, it's the Kamma that we have intentionally committed, and it has our number, as they say. It has our name and number. It's with us. If you take form in any of the realms, human or otherwise, it will be there with us. Eventually, at the end of this sutta, I would like to share some more descriptives or delineate some of the differences between what we mean by Kamma, but they all fall short compared to what the Buddha is going to be explaining in this sutta itself. So let's come back. And then, on hearing these words spoken by the Blessed One, the young Brahmin Subha said this while addressing the teacher. But Master Gotama, I'm unable to grasp the deeper meaning or understand the detailed nuances of what Master Gautama just mentioned briefly. Please, may the great Gautama kindly unfold and reveal the depth of meaning of what he outlined in brief. That way I may hear and thus learn the deeper meaning and understand the detailed nuances of Master Gautama's instruction to me. And we're so happy that he did ask that. Could you, Bhante, unravel it? We owe it to this young Brahmin. In that case, young pupil, listen carefully to what I shall say. Yes, blessed Lord, replied the young Brahmin. And the Blessed One continued instructing, as he said this. Here, young pupil, there is a type of man or woman who kills living beings while having a ravenously bloodthirsty heart. Being a violent person, he or she would seek to murder and assault living beings, having a cold-blooded and merciless disposition. Now, while living contentiously with an angry heart and possessing wrong view, at the breakup of the body after death, such a person is reborn into states of utter misery, sorrow, and pain, reappearing into the lower realms, being reborn in the hells. However, if for some reason or other, instead of reappearing in the hell realms, he or she is reborn as a human, then the life that person is reborn into will be short-lived. This, therefore, is the cause whereby some human beings end up having short lives, while others go on living up to an advanced age, and only die after having lived a very long life. Thus, wanting to harm and kill living beings is the surest way to have a life that is short-lived. We see it all the time. The child was innocent. Why did they kill the child? Why did the child suddenly, a car came and hit them, this and that? In many cases, we do not consider the karmic factors involved. We just see what's in front of us. We never probe. And the theory, the principle, not just the theory, the principle, the explanation of Kamma as taught by the Buddha, because there were two other, I've mentioned this many times, contemporary thoughts at the time in India, which unfortunately, even though 2,600 years have passed, people are still stuck on their wrong views about Kamma, and they still perpetuate. One is the Brahmin explanation that once you are born as a Brahmin or as a Suddha, as a low caste, untouchable, that's it. You can't come out of it. You have to live it out for the rest of your life. So basically, you're stuck with the Kamma. You cannot make any changes to your life to improve your conditions, which works very good for the economic, political, financial structure that they had to this day, the Brahmins, the Khattiyas, etc., to keep people in their stratus, in stratum, and never allow people to come out. So that's one. And because they place themselves above everyone else, the Brahmins, that is a wrong interpretation of Kamma. It's not. It hasn't got anything to do with the person's ability to improve their it doesn't have any humanistic value as such, which is one of the reasons why the Buddha was against this kind of a wrong interpretation of Kamma. The second one is the Jain interpretation, which again to this day continues within Jainism, and it's seeping into the rest of the culture, which has to do with, if you do this, okay, don't walk on grass, for example, because you're going to end up killing living beings. Okay, by not having done that, you have actually chipped away, erased, in a sense, by that action, you erase some of the Kamma, the bad, the dark, they're called Kamma. So they actually have a concept that Kamma is an object, is a thing that you can remove, scrape away, chisel away the bad. And the Buddha's very simple, logical question to them was, how do you know how much Kamma you have accumulated? Whereby you're saying, I'm taking away this much and it's becoming less and less. How do you know? Because for countless eons, we have been accumulating Kamma. Good and bad, especially bad, because by nature, we have more of a propensity to doing bad deeds because of wrong information, because of ignorance. So people could not answer that. So the whole idea about harmlessness or ahimsa is completely false, because it's a transaction. It's a tit for tat, just like that man was thinking, if I had given the food to my workers, I would have gotten a good return. Even that is not metta when they do harmlessness. It's not a consideration for the animals that might be squashed or not. And it is drenched in conceit that you're going to outsmart life, in a sense, in this case, Kamma. However, the Buddha, again, humanistically looked at, how can I change my behavior whereby I will improve my behavior. And by so doing, the life around me will be protected, loved. So it's not just me, everyone else will grow. That's the ideal of a bhikkhu. By working on oneself totally, to relinquish ignorance, to come out of suffering, that's the objective that one practices to begin with. Layperson or monastic, really doesn't make a difference. So he was completely a new voice. And that's why one of the reasons why so many people were coming to listen to the Buddha, because they realize it doesn't make sense, this idea of these two other interpretations of Kamma, because it has intelligence. It gives back dignity to the human being, that you have a say in Kamma. You can change your life. You can improve your situation. It's not, okay, you're a criminal, that's it, you're going to be a criminal. No, hold on. If that was the case, Angulimala would never have become ahimsaka, in a sense. He couldn't become an arahant. And he's just one example. So anyhow, let's go back to the sutta. On the other hand, there may be another man or woman who abstains from harming or killing living beings, someone who puts down weapons and sticks that are used to harm others. And thus he or she lives a kind and caring life, with compassion in the heart and an empathic disposition towards all living beings. Now, while living contentedly with a kind heart and possessing right view, at the breakup of the body after death, such a person is reborn into states of heavenly delights, reappearing into the divine realms. However, if for some reason or other, instead of reappearing into the divine realms, he or she is reborn as a human, then the life that person is reborn into is long-lived. This, therefore, is the cause whereby some human beings have a long lifespan, up to an advanced age, and only die after having lived a very long life, while others end up having lives that are short-lived. Thus, living one's life with a kind and caring attitude, with compassion in one's heart, and an empathic disposition towards all living beings, is the surest way to have a life that is long-lived. So when you're giving life, you gain life. Because you have many, many examples in just from the Dhammapada, where you see encounters with individuals who were lepers, who had some skin disease, that had harmed others. You have individuals who have spat on a holy person, And in the next life, in at least the life that of which Dhammapada relates the story of them meeting the Buddha or one of the students, and then the Buddha explains, or Venerable Mahamoggalana explains as to what were the causes for such a terrible thing to inflict them, the disease. And you see that this person tried to harm them or insult them or tossed urine at the in front of the person, the holy person. So that would be the negative, right? But what about the positive? The positive is when you give life. So one of the things that we can do is when you see a being, let's say a being that is about to be killed or harmed, and you release them, either killed or harmed by you or someone else. I had a friend, and we would talk about, saving the spiders in the household. And for some reason, we humans don't like spiders, right? Cockroaches, things like that. And the father would just traditionally, he would pick up his slippers, one of them at least, and go smacking the spiders whenever they would see them. And one day he told me how, because we've been talking about this and we were showing him, the father, and showing him how to get rid of the spider out of the house, which is basically very simple. You get a cup, usually transparent if you have a plastic cup or something like that, and you slide a cardboard or like a letter, something that's not open, so it's kind of rigid, and you gently place it around the spider, so it's now inside that receptacle, and you gently slide that cardboard or paper through between the wall and the cup, the lid, and you flip it and you take it outside, safe place, and then you shake it off and let them go. So that friend one day, he says, "You're not going to believe this." And I said, "What?" And he's like, "I saw my dad telling me, oh, wait, I'm going to take care of the spider." And he placed the cup around the spider and took it outside. And I said, I still get goosebumps remembering it. Wonderful. He doesn't know he's been dead for almost 2 decades now, the man. But I'm so happy that he began to think like that at the end of his life on this planet. That has a bearing, the Buddhas say, because you gave life. You knew about that as you were doing it, and it inspires others. So, further, young pupil, there is a type of man or woman who enjoys hurting and harming living beings, whether through his body, such as by striking with his hand, or by other objects like a cane or a stick, or with a blade, sword. Now, as a result of having such a nasty way of thinking and behaving in a mean manner towards others, at the breakup of the body after death, such a person is reborn into states of utter misery, sorrow, and pain, reappearing into the lower realms, being reborn in the hells. However, if for some reason or other, instead of reappearing in the hell realms, he or she is reborn as a human, then as a human being, that person will be weakly and prone to sickness, experiencing many ailments and unable to enjoy health. Now, this, therefore, is the cause whereby some human beings end up being weakly and prone to sickness, while others do not, living healthy lives without many ailments. Thus, being nasty and behaving in such a mean manner towards others, whether by using one's body, such as in striking with one's hand, or by other objects like a cane or a stick, or with a blade, is the surest way to end up having a body that is weakly and prone to sickness, experiencing many ailments and being unable to enjoy health. On the other hand, there may be another man or woman who abstains from hurting or harming living beings, whether through his body, such as by striking with his hand, or by other objects like a cane or a stick, or with a blade. Now, as a result of having avoided such damaging behaviors at the breakup of the body after death, such a person is reborn into states of heavenly delights, reappearing into the divine realms. However, if for some reason or other, instead of reappearing into the divine realms, he or she is reborn as a human, then the life of that person brings with it a body that does not become sick or weak. He or she thus lives a healthy life without experiencing ailments or sickness. You see the inheritance, the binding inheritance between the Kamma and the person? Because unfortunately, we do not recall our past lives. In most cases, we don't. And with that, we don't remember our actions that we've committed. We always think in tight compartments of where I am, how I feel, how I think today. And we kind of extrapolate that, expand that to the rest of our life. And we say, we think that that's how we have been all throughout, or we will be for the rest of this life, until somebody that knew us back then comes in and says, no, 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 do you remember you used to do this? And we go, oh yeah, don't remind me. Okay, that's only one life we're talking about so far. What about countless lives we've lived? We don't recall them. But their effect reverberates and reaches us, depending on the intensity of the Kamma, the significance of the Kamma. Now remember, sometimes people get sick, but sometimes they are also exposed to being harmed, damaged by other factors. Yes, cold, heat, this and that, these are abiotic. These don't have consciousness, right? These are not coming from people, let's say, or beings. But there are situations where people are doing these things to us. I remember when I was in primary school or elementary school, we had a principal who would walk around with a flat, specially made cane that was flat on one side and it had a handle for both hands, you know. And it had a beautiful color, but it was a deplorable thing because I saw eventually he came at us with it, the students, especially the boys, and he would hit us. Nobody would stop him. You know, that doesn't go away for the person who perpetrated those acts. On the other hand, I remember my grandma sometimes when my dad would get upset or angry and he would pull out his belt and want to hit us as punishment when we were kids, my grandma would jump in front of him. How could that go away? That's beautiful. So I'm not worried about her in that regard. This, therefore, is the cause whereby some human beings come to possess and enjoy healthy lives without having many ailments, whereas others end up being weakly in their bodies and prone to becoming sick. Thus, refusing to be nasty or to behave in such a mean manner towards others, whether through one's body, such as by striking with one's hand, or in using objects like a cane or a stick or a blade, is the surest way to be reborn into a body that does not become sick nor weak. Instead, such a person lives a healthy life without experiencing ailments or sickness. Especially with young people that you've heard of or you know in your life that are supposed to be healthy. They're genetically well disposed to have healthy lives, healthy bodies, but then you see them getting sick. And in some cases, it's not something that they ate or something they did, but they just end up getting sick. I hope we're getting a better idea as to why from this sutta. Further, young people, there is a type of man or woman with an angry character, irritable and short-tempered, who becomes inflamed with rage and hostility at the slightest provocation, and whose heart hardens quickly, turning bitter, nasty, and cold in his or her attitude towards others. Now, as a result of having such a harsh and mean attitude towards others, at the breakup of the body after death, such a person is reborn into states of utter misery, sorrow, and pain, reappearing. So he's repeating that However, if for some reason or other, instead of reappearing in the hell realms, he or she is reborn as a human, then as a human being, such a person will be born ugly and unattractive to look at, unlike others who are beautiful and lovely. This, therefore, is the cause whereby some human beings end up being born ugly and unattractive to look at, while others are beautiful and lovely. I've met people who look like, sad to say, monkeys. Actually, even a monkey could look at them and say, that's ugly. That's how bad they look. But you look around them and they have siblings, things, people that are not that horrendous to look at, but they are nice people. The person who looks ugly, even. And I know in this culture of ours where we, all diversity and all that nonsense, we can't even say words like ugly or dumb or unwise or stupid or wise. No, these things have to be said. My changing of the terms does not change the fact that this person is ugly. And everybody knows that they're ugly. But we're not talking about it. No, he knows, she knows that they are not appealing to look at, and they're feeling the pain of that. And that's what Lord Buddha was addressing. He wasn't trying to hurt people's feelings, which modern society is all functioning around, apparently. Childish, very childish. And thus, living with an angry character, being irritable and short-tempered, becoming inflamed with rage and hostility at the slightest provocation, and having a heart that hardens quickly, turning bitter, nasty, and cold in his or her attitude towards others, is the surest way to end up being born ugly and unattractive to look at, while others are beautiful and lovely. On the other hand, there may be another man or woman who does not possess an angry character, who avoids becoming irritable or bitter, and instead is patient and persevering. Someone who does not become hostile nor inflamed with rage at the slightest provocation, where he or she maintains a soft heart, remaining kind and sweet, as well as considerate towards others. Now, as a result of having such a lovely character, at the breakup of the body, after death, such a person is reborn into states of heavenly delights, reappearing into the divine realms. However, if for some reason or other, instead of reappearing into the divine realms, he or she is reborn as a human, then in that life, such a person is reborn into a body that is beautiful and lovely, compared to others who are born ugly and unattractive to look at. This, therefore, is the cause whereby some human beings are born to be attractive and beautiful, whereas others end up being ugly and unattractive to look at. Thus, refusing to be an angry person and avoiding to become irritable or bitter, and instead choosing to become patient and persevering, one who does not become hostile nor inflamed with rage at the slightest provocation, who maintains a soft heart, remaining kind and sweet, as well as considerate towards others, is the surest way to be reborn into a body that is both attractive and beautiful, whereas others end up being ugly and unattractive to look at. By the way, Kamma doesn't care if you're a teenager or an adult, very advanced in your years. How your actions are impacting the people to whom your actions are targeting or pointed at, directed at. That's why I would see teenagers in middle school when I was a teacher, and I would see sometimes they would gang up on saying something painful, nasty, or in high school or other places, especially now with social media. I know people say sometimes like Instagram, things like that. And on, I think the term is, what was it? You're attacking people. I know there's a term people use. And it causes pain. Even though you might never physically be face to face with this person ever in your life. They might be on the other side of the planet. But you have a trolling, I think that's what it's called. You go ahead and hurl some insults at this person. Or put a thumbs down just to kind of give it to the person because they make you feel a certain way. That also will bring this about, by the way. Because if the person is going to be aware of this energy, and you yourself are aware of this energy because you're putting out these vibes of animosity and negativity out there to the world, you just committed kammic misdemeanor. Your action is bad kamma. It's going to come back to us. It's like a ripple effect. You throw a pebble or a rock in the middle of a lake, and it's going to reach all the way to the shore. You're going to see it as a wave reaching sooner or later. It will get there. That's our kamma. So do we want the ripple to be a positive one, a beautiful one, a healthy one, a wholesome one, or their opposite? So who has control here? We do. At least for the other kammic influences that are waiting to happen. Because there are some kammic actions, some consequences that can be definitely changed. I know earlier I said you cannot change, especially in the context of Brahmanism, but we have examples of this in the suttas where people can delay the possibility of a terrible consequence from reaching them because of an action they committed. Perfect example, I mentioned already, Venerable Angulimala. He had killed 999 people just in that life. He was encountering the impact of that, but nobody killed him, was able to kill him. Nevertheless, he was suffering terribly. Almost every day he went on alms round. Slaps, rocks thrown at him, slashing him, cutting him, beating him with canes, attacks. But he didn't die. The kind of horrible actions he had committed, however, could easily make one susceptible to death at least once. It was almost 1,000 people he killed. And the Buddha did address this issue to him, and he says, bear it, Brahmin, bear it. Because if you had not attained, you would have landed in the hell realms where you would be for a very long time. So the action of coming to the Dhamma, him dropping his weapons, completely changed his prospects, despite the intensity of the actions. That's how powerful the Dhamma is, because it changes the personality of the person. If it's true understanding gained, the person's life, sila, samadhi, panya, is inseparable. That's why they have attained stream winning, which cuts the bridge to lower realms. Nevertheless, if he had been only a sakadagami, a once returner, he would still end up as a human and still have to face terrible pain, despite the fact that he's a noble disciple. That's why Lord Buddha wanted to push him to arahantship as fast as possible. So even that possibility is cut off. Of course, I use the term pushing as a metaphor. Further, young pupil, there is a type of man or woman who is envious and resentful of others. Someone who is jealous, full of grudges and antagonism towards those who gain fame, respect, and honor. Now, as a result of being envious and jealous of others, at the breakup of the body after death, such a person is reborn into states of utter misery, sorrow, and pain, reappearing into the lower realms, being reborn in the hells. By the way, I know many people do not talk about the hell realms. It's, again, like not people are not in favor of talking about these, especially in Dhammic circles. However, these are extremely important points for us to recall and bear in mind as facts. They are not hearsay. And when the Buddha is talking about hell realms, he's not talking about people in this world as humans living hellish lives. No. We don't have such creative licenses to use to interpret the Dhamma, to gain favor from our listeners and students, to be popular. No, because this is not a popular idea, right? Or approach or teaching. So people have clipped the principle of hells and heavens out of the Dhamma, unfortunately. So we have to really bring the focus back onto this, because the person needs to know that this is what's waiting for them. It's so quick. It's so quick when you close your eyes. If you've at the end of your life and you have not lived a Dhammically sound life, a wholesome life, you've done any of those bad deeds, you've lied at least to people, you've deceived people, you close your eyes, you will land in hell. I'm not doing the preacher thing, or on my soapbox. I'm just saying something that is being ignored by people. This is real, folks. This is real. There is no state of limbo either, where, like in Judeo-Christian religions, you wait for the judgment day type of a thing. No. It's quick. It's immediate. And no, it's not like they say in other Buddhist traditions, where you have 4 weeks or 49 days and all that nonsense, which has nothing to do with Buddhism, like the Bardo in Tibetan tradition. There's no such thing. That was a misconception, misinterpretation of some suttas. It's immediate, the Buddha says. It's very immediate. Same thing with the heavenly realms or human realm, to be conceived in a mother's womb. It's quick. So long as you have nama rupa, consciousness coming together, vijnana, boom, you have an embryo. Now, sometimes they won't stick because the heaviness of nama rupa isn't there. So the consciousness might be there, but without some substrate for it to land, poof, that's going to go away. Or you just have the nama rupa without the consciousness part. That's what we call miscarriages. Sometimes you have the fetus growing, and then what you have is stillborn. As the baby or the fetus comes out, it's dead on arrival. It didn't click. So it's not just when the person is walking around that we say, okay, now I can see the kammic influences upon this person. No, it doesn't stop. That's what I'm saying. So long as you're cycling through samsara, it doesn't stop. So please do not be fooled by your current situations, especially if they are of a pleasing nature, of a calm, relaxed, peaceful, where you don't have any of these bombardments, emotionally heavy, physically demanding circumstances happening to you. That doesn't mean that that's how it always will be or was. Now it is. That's why Dhamma has to be practiced. There's nothing more important than that practice, and it's very individual. All your other interests, put them aside. All your other responsibilities, put them aside. Ultimately, they all come second in priority to the practice, because you're working with your life, you're working with your potentials, you're working with where you will end up. Smart, wise is the person who wants to cut themselves free. That's why when a person says, Bhante, what can I do to be born in Tushita realm or into the heavenly realms where I don't have to feel any more pain? after I listen and understandingly, caringly, I have to unravel that to them, for them, and say, it's not permanent, You're going to fall out of that vacation sooner or later. You're going to fall into the opposite of the pleasure realm. So the Buddha saw this. Any meditator who practices well and comes to see the facts about these statements will shudder at the thought of wanting to be born in a heavenly realm, because all these are different levels of a prison. Yes, you have isolation chambers, you have torture chambers in the prison, let's say, and then the higher up you go in good behavior, you will be living maybe in less intense security, less intense, less terrible situations, but still in prison. Think of those as the Brahma realms. Gods where they live. That's where they are. They're just, time is ticking. So wise is that being who sees and says, I need to cut myself loose from all this nonsense, come out and just break free from the cycling. And fortunately, we've had the opportunity to discuss a few of those suttas in the past. One is the Vibhaṅga Sutta, if you recall, who thought that he was God of all gods. He was the great Brahma. He was, timeless. He was infinite. Simply because he only lived for a few trillion years. Big bangs coming and going. He's like, yeah, I've seen. So I must be the one. Foolish, utter nonsense. So the person has to think, you will never find me in the heavenly realms, nor in the hell realms, of course. I'm cutting myself loose, and that's why we have to practice. And no one will do that for us other than us. We are truly practicing Buddhism. We are truly practicing as students of Lord Buddha and what he taught, if that is the objective. Plain and simple. Otherwise, you're just killing time, loitering about from life to life. Sometimes you experience good birth. You have a human body. You have two legs. Wow, you have a pair of individuals. You call them parents, if you're lucky, who are caring. You live in a place where the bombs aren't falling over you. People aren't kidnapping you or your loved ones. They're not coming and harassing or raping you. Wow, you're still lucky. You're still fortunate, but it's a rare good fortune, because usually it will be the opposite. Because the propensity to do harm and evil, because of the presence of ignorance being more dominant, you will have more chances of such terrible circumstances happening to you. So don't turn that into the general situation where you're experiencing something that's pleasant. That's why Lord Buddha emphasized Jara Marana, decay, aging, old age, decay, wrinkles, your memory not working, you not looking so attractive as you used to be, memory not working, etc., etc. So it takes more effort to maintain the body, right? To make it look good, to make it be healthy. You have to exercise, eat right food, this and that. But how much effort does it take to really go the opposite direction? To get fat, to get unhealthy, to have diabetes, to look deplorable. It's so easy. Don't shower. Don't clip your nails. Don't cut your hair. Wear dirty clothes. You see how fast it is? It doesn't require maintaining to be dirty. It requires maintaining if you're wanting to be clean, healthy. Do you see the propensity then for going down? It's so quick. It doesn't take any effort, but to be healthy takes effort. Same thing with Kamma. No different. Now, as a result of being envious and jealous of others, at the breakup of the body after death, such a person is reborn into states of utter misery, sorrow, and pain, reappearing into the lower realms, being reborn in the hells. However, if for some reason or other, instead of reappearing in the hell realms, he or she is reborn as a human, then that person would be born into a family that and positions that are insignificant without much importance or influence in society. This, therefore, is the cause whereby some human beings end up being born into families and positions that are insignificant or unimportant, hence without any influential role to play in society. Thus, being envious and resentful of others, full of grudges and antagonism towards those who gain fame, respect, and honor, is the surest way to end up being born into an insignificant role in society, a position that is without any influence. It's self-explanatory. It follows the same pattern, doesn't it? You're trying to throw like mudslinging at people, trying to sully their reputation, break them apart, antagonistic. Well, that's going to come back to you. And you're going to wonder, why? Why can I not be influential? This happens in the case of people, for example, who want to say something and you're in the middle of, let's say, even your friend's circle. And everybody's saying something or somebody's saying something, and then you start, saying something, and everybody turns away from you and listen to somebody else or turn the TV on, or you're not important. And it's very painful. Well, even that, because there's no logical explanation for that. You didn't, your voice is good, you're not like mumbling, and you have something intelligent to say, yet the circumstances aren't fitting enough. So people will give you the rightful attention. So Lord Buddha is giving us the explanation as to why. On the other hand, there may be another man or woman who is neither envious nor resentful of others, someone who is not jealous, who neither begrudgingly looks at what others have or enjoy, nor is antagonistic towards those who gain fame, respect, and honor. Now, as a result of overcoming the tendency to become envious, thus abstaining to have any jealousy towards others, at the breakup of the body after death, such a person is reborn into states of heavenly delights, reappearing into the divine realms. However, if for some reason or other, instead of reappearing in the divine realms, he or she is reborn as a human, then such a person would be born into a family and positions that are important and influential in society. This, therefore, is the cause whereby some human beings are born into families and positions that are important and influential in society, while others are not, living without such influence. Thus, refusing to be envious or jealous of others while not begrudgingly looking at the successes of others is the surest way to be reborn as a human into families and positions that are important and influential in society. So anytime people go wanting to engage in a debate or trying to do mudslinging, despite the forum, the platform, the arena where this is taking place, it could be small, a venue, it could be big, it's presidential election type of thing, or debates where people want to belittle and crush the other person. They're asking for trouble. In fact, they're getting themselves into trouble. Now, when a person is reborn into such an influential situation or circumstance or families, we have a tendency to place them high above us. Doesn't mean anything, that actually. The fact that they are born in an influential family means nothing. The person might still be stupid. Right? Look at any of the rich people or, royals and things like that in the world. You really think how many, neurons are they working in their brain of theirs, I don't want to hang out with this person on a person-to-person level because they have nothing to say, even though they come from an influential arena family. So they're, even landing in the heavenly realms does not make somebody smarter than you. Okay? Circumstances might be better. It's like a rich person versus someone who's not rich. They have more resources, but that doesn't mean necessarily that they are living the noble life or a noble life. Further, young people, there is a type of man or woman who does not offer any food or drinks to those in need. Someone who refuses to support or give any gifts of clothing, transportation, various requisites such as a dwelling place, oil lamps, and other utensils to help them see in the dark, or other basic necessities of life to those in need. Now, as a result of being stingy and miserly at the breakup of the body after death, such a person is reborn into states of utter misery, sorrow, and pain, reappearing into the lower realms, being reborn in the hells. However, if for some reason or other, instead of reappearing in the hell realms, he or she is reborn as a human, then such a person would be born into poverty, lacking most, if not all, the necessities of life, born into families that are destitute and without resources or means. You have many, many examples from world history or the news today, right? Where you see people in dire circumstances. They can't even get water. They can't even have safety. They don't even have a sofa to rest upon or a solid ground to, all this is a combination of their Kamma. Now, people sometimes take this into an extreme. What I mean by this is everything that's happening is because of Kamma. That is not entirely true. You have examples of this in the suttas, in fact, where Lord Buddha is correcting individuals who say it's all Kamma. Why? Because there's also circumstances where individuals are making intentional actions where you happen to be, and you are now essentially are facing that situation for the very first time, irrespective of any actions you've committed. Because I've even heard some Buddhist monks, teachers, therefore, explaining that everything is that. It's already decided. No, that is a wrong, evil view, because that takes us into the realm of determinism, which was a philosophical school. Has nothing to do with the Dhamma anymore. It's the same thing as the Brahmins saying, oh, it's determined already. You are born as a Khattiya, you are born as a Brahmin, you're good to go, you are on the top echelon of society. No, we don't have that. That goes against. So the intention of the person, that's why we have the Noble Eightfold Path, where we have right speech, right action. Right action. When there is wrong action, the person who has the means can commit the wrong action. And if you're there at the wrong place at the wrong time, despite any karmically involved seeds on your part, this person is laying their own evil seeds, and you just happen to be there without your actions previously having resulted in this circumstance. That's what I'm trying to say. So please be careful not to fall into that deterministic wrong view that I've seen again and again some very well-known bhikkhus falling into, because they haven't studied the suttas apparently properly, or understood or practiced the Dhamma properly. That's why it's dangerous to be falling for our ideas and thoughts and interpretations. So let's be careful not, even though Lord Buddha is getting into details, the tendency of the mind is it likes to jump on either side of the fence. the extremes. So be careful. This, therefore, is the cause whereby some human beings end up being born into poverty in families that are destitute and without resources or means, where others are born into much wealth and affluence, because just like the Brahmins do, they justify the situation of poverty. Well, it's because of their actions they're born poor. Sorry to be you. Like people in affluent countries or in oppressive regimes who are oppressing other people and destroying lives, they say, well, better them than me. That places you very close to a hell realm, because you're justifying the evil that somebody's committing. Again, this could be on a one-on-one basis in your own micro circle of friends, life, or it could be macro, entire societies, and what your stance or position is in regards to that. So the Dhamma has to be in the hearts, our hearts, in what we say, in what we think, in what we do. Even if it's not popular, what you're about to say, as long as it's coming from Dhamma, that will be your free choice to exercise your own intentional action and let that be released into the world. You're creating change already. But make sure you live accordingly, according to the Dhamma. Thus, living a stingy and miserly life, refusing to help others or support them by giving gifts of food or drinks to those in need, nor offering gifts of clothing, etc. So this is that person, is the surest way to end up being born into poverty, lacking most of it, if not all of the basic necessities of life, being born among families that are destitute and without resources or means. On the other hand, there may be another man or woman who does indeed offer food and drinks to those practitioners and Brahmins in need. Someone who eagerly supports others by giving gifts of clothing, transportation, various requisites such as a dwelling place, oil lamps, and other utensils to help them see in the dark, or other basic necessities of life to those in need. Now, as a result of being generous and open-handedly giving to all those practitioners and Brahmins in need, at the breakup of the body after death, such a person is reborn into states of heavenly delights, reappearing into the divine realms. However, if for some reason or other, instead of reappearing into the divine realms, he or she is reborn as a human, then such a person would be born into an affluently rich family with much wealth and vast resources to enjoy. Now, this itself could be a blessing, of course, but it could also be a nightmare, having all these resources, as the case is with celebrities and wealthy people, etc., people of means. Why? Because that's only one criterion. What if they have bad parents, encouraging bad behavior, justifying criminality, justifying stealing? You're born in, a family that runs powerful companies, corporations that support destroying or, arms races and building weapons and killing entire populations. What if you happen to be the granddaughter or grandson of such a mogul? So is that really a blessing? Or it could be if you have wisdom and you break away from such a lifestyle. That's why many people are caught in a negative cycle despite the opportunities they're presented with. Remember Siddhartha Gautama, the Buddha, before being the Buddha, he made a choice. He put down his weapon as a king to be. He was trained killer as a soldier. He was going to be king. He said, no, I'm not going to subscribe to such a lifestyle. Now, you might not be the son of a king or daughter of a king or a wealthy mogul, but you might have resources and means that others don't. Check to see how you're using those resources, including the donations you're making. including the words you're saying. What is your objective? What is your priority in doing that? Is that a way of escapism? Are you doing some type of a transaction? Are you running away from true practice? Because sometimes that's what people resort to when they do donations. Okay, I'm done. I'm good to go. I made my donation. That's not practice. The Buddha would discourage such a move. Priority is the practice. Nothing supersedes it. Nothing's even equal to it. Even taking care of your body or taking care of loved ones, they cannot come close to the practice, because if your practice is lousy or if it doesn't exist, you cannot have a loved one to take care of. You cannot love, really. You cannot even be donating, really, with the right intentions, because there's ulterior motives there. Very subtle. They're there. When you sit down to practice, are you drooping your head? Are you falling asleep? That's not practice. You're not being loyal to the practice. You're not being truthful to the practice. Why? Next time you're watching your favorite video game or favorite game, maybe you're watching a match that you like, check to see if your head droops. I challenge you, it will not. Impossible, because you like it. That's your distraction. That is your clue. That's your red flag that your practice is lousy. I don't care how many years you've been supposedly meditating. It has to be life and death attitude. That makes it practice. Otherwise, we're just taking this life for granted. We're thinking that we're going to live long enough one day to really delve into the practice. It doesn't work like that, unfortunately. That's why Lord Buddha would always urge us, urge, Sangvega. You have to work as if the next 5 days, I'm being generous, are your very last in this life. It's sad and funny, ironic at the same time, when I hear people saying, writing me, oh, Bhante, I'm going to go ahead and enjoy my life now. And because if I don't do it now, when am I going to do it? You don't know whether to cry or in sadness for the person or laugh at the stupidity and the missed opportunity here. Because the person is presuming they're going to have many, many lives, or I'm sorry, many years. This is not a right in a sense. It's a privilege, you can think of, being alive in a healthy body that still functions. This, therefore, is the cause whereby some human beings are born into affluently rich families with much wealth and vast resources to enjoy. Further, young people, I'm jumping ahead because it's a repetition, and plus the sutta is available, as I mentioned many times with other suttas. Please, print the PDF from the website and read it or watch it, read it online, mindrelease.com. So it's a lot of work that goes into every single one of these translations that I do, and I'm going over it, not because, self-torture here, either mine or yours. No, this is a rare opportunity that we still have the Dhamma. In the Samyutta Nikaya, Lord Buddha talks about the turtle, the analogy of the turtle, one-eyed turtle that pops its head every 100 years. And it so happens there's a floating one-eyed yolk in the middle of the open ocean. And the turtle pops its head through that eye of the yolk and looks up with the good eye, because it's blind in one eye. Look how rare it is. And he's talking about this in regards to us being human, born as a human. Now, that's how rare it is, because we have presumed that when a person dies, sooner or later they're going to be human again. No. No, it's rare to be human. Don't believe me? Go outside, look in the yard. Look, scrape some of your skin, put it under a microscope, and you'll see countless beings that are not human. You are human. Do not take it for granted. Do not take this opportunity. And Lord Buddha even emphasizes in relation to those analogies in those two suttas back to back in the Samyutta Nikaya. He says, imagine then the rarity of being born as a human at the time when the Dhamma is still alive. Adds more intensity, doesn't it, in the wise among us. So let's be wise and not take this life of ours for granted, the opportunities. Further, young people, there is the type of man or woman who is arrogant and conceited, obstinately refusing to pay respect nor venerate those who are worthy of respect and veneration. Thus, they do not bow nor rise from their seats, and neither offer their seat to those truly deserving of honor and nor respect. Now, as a result of their arrogance and conceit, at the breakup of the body after death, such a person is reborn into states of utter misery, sorrow, and pain, reappearing into the lower realms, being reborn in the hells. However, if for some reason or other, instead of reappearing in the hell realms, he or she is reborn as a human, then such a person would be born into the lower caste families of society. This, therefore, is the cause whereby some human beings end up being born into the lower caste families of society, while others are into the high-born, prominent, leading castes. Thus, living arrogantly and conceited, obstinately refusing to pay any respects nor venerate those that are worthy of respect and veneration, is the surest way to be reborn into those castes, lower castes. On the other hand, there may be another man or woman who is not arrogant nor conceited, who pays genuine respect to those and venerates those who are worthy of respect and veneration. Thus, they are humble enough to bow, rise from their seats, and offer their seat to those truly deserving of honor and respect. Now, remember, most of the time, these people will not be who you think they are. The people that we venerate or don't want to venerate, you do not know that. So what does that leave us with? Consider everyone worthy of veneration, at least initially, until you see their behavior closely. And then you can make your own decision. That shows humility. That will put a glow on your face, on your body. The skin is going to look beautiful. Your eyes will see better. Your hair will be better in your next birth. You'll be born in a healthy situation, circumstances. So please do not undermine what is being said here by Lord Buddha. Now, as a result of not being arrogant, conceited, or obstinate in their behavior, because what happens is many people today even use the Dhamma as validation for their conceit. I've seen more conceit in Dhamma circles than anywhere else, and I've been around the block. I've had many different experiences or in different contexts in life, but it's astonishing the level of arrogance and conceit that I've seen in Dhamma circles, both from laity and monastics. But you have to give a person the benefit of a doubt. So you approach with kindness, with opportunity for a healthy environment, and then you see where that takes you. And if your senses are well open, you will detect soon enough if you need to step away. But this is dangerous. That's what I'm trying to say. To maintain such a conceited, arrogant, and no Dhamma can hide it. Sooner than later, it will show up for its ugliness, the conceit and arrogance, I mean. No amount of knowledge or book knowledge or theory knowledge will ever get you even close to the Dhamma. Just like Lord Buddha says in the Dhammapada, A spoon will never taste the soup. And we have a collection of different spoons around. However, if so, for some reason or other, instead of reappearing to the divine realms, he or she is reborn as a human, that person would reappear into high-born families, into prominent and leading castes. This, therefore, is the cause whereby some human beings are born into prominent and leading families and castes. Okay, by not being arrogant or conceited. Further, young people, we're nearing the end of the sutta, in case you're wondering. Bear with me. Young people, there is a type of man or woman who does not take the initiative to approach and ask a teacher or a dedicated practitioner the following questions. Bhante, could you please teach me what is skillful and what is unskillful? What is kusala, what is akusala? Or Bhante, could you please teach me what is a blameworthy behavior and what is blameless action or behavior? Or, Bhante, could you please teach me what should be cultivated and what should not? Bhante, could you please teach me what kind of action is in fact damaging that could lead to my destruction and lasting harm? Bhante, could you please teach me what kind of action I must engage in that brings about my happiness and well-being for a very long time? Bhante, could you please teach me the kind of action that once performed will take the one who commits it into states of misery and even to hell? So the opposite, akusala. Bhante, could you please teach me what the reason is why some human beings are stupid and witless while others are wise and discerning? Now, because of their lack in initiative or interest to approach and ask a teacher or dedicated practitioner such important questions, at the breakup of the body after death, such a person is reborn into states of utter misery, sorrow, and pain, reappearing into the lower realms, being reborn in the hells. However, if for some reason or other, instead of reappearing in the hell realms, he or she is reborn as a human, then that person will be stupid and witless. This, therefore, is the cause whereby some human beings are born stupid and witless, while others are wise and discerning. You might see sometimes children, very young children, that you say something or something occurs and they have a comeback, they have a statement that makes you stop and ponder how beautiful of a response or reaction that was, unanticipated from such a young person. Well, guess what? They're not in the former camp of being witless or stupid. They are in the wise, discerning camp, even though they're very young. Thus, living without taking the initiative to approach and ask a teacher or dedicated practitioner such questions is the surest way to end up reappearing as a stupid and witless person if one is reborn into the human realm. On the other hand, young pupil, there is a type of man or woman who does indeed take the initiative to approach and ask a teacher or a dedicated practitioner the following questions. I'm not going to repeat the same questions. As a result of one's vested interest in wanting to find out and therefore learn what one does not know, having the interest and curiosity in finding out the truth about these very important matters, at the breakup of the body after death, such a person is reborn into states of heavenly delights, reappearing into the divine realms. However, if for some reason or other, instead of reappearing into the divine realms, he or she is reborn into the human realm, then one would be a wise and discerning human being. This, therefore, is the cause whereby some human beings are born as wise and discerning, whereas others are born stupid and witless. Now, this young pupil is therefore the path of practice, the way of living one's life, the very reason why some human beings end up having short lives. So now Lord Buddha is reiterating what he said initially. But now there's this huge chunk of information that he classified it by giving the exposition to young Todeya's son, the Brahmin, the young Brahmin. The very reason why some human beings end up having short lives while others go on living into advanced age and only die after having lived for a very long time. Furthermore, this is the path of practice, the way of living one's life, the very reason young pupil, why some human beings are weakly and prone to sickness, while others are not, living healthy lives without having many ailments. Also, this is the path of practice, the way of living one's life, the very reason, young pupil, why some are born ugly and unattractive to look at, while others are beautiful and lovely. Also, this is the path of practice, the way of living one's life, the very reason, young pupil, why some are born into families and positions that are important and influential in society, while others are not, and thus live without any influence. Also, this is the path of practice, the way of living one's life, the very reason, young pupil, why some human beings are born into wealth and affluence, while others are born into poverty, without the resources or means that some others have. Also, this is the path of practice, the way of living one's life, the very reason, young pupil, why some humans are born into the lower caste families of society, while others are highborn into prominent and leading castes. Also, this is the path of practice, the way of living one's life, the very reason, young pupil, why some human beings are stupid and witless, while others are wise and discerning. After all, young pupil, beings are the owners of their intentionally committed actions, their Kamma. They are the inescapable inheritors of their Kamma. For Kamma is their matrix and origin. Kamma is their ancestral bloodline. Kamma is their refuge and resort. Therefore, it is one's own intentional actions that lead one to be born as inferior, while others are born superior. All due to the individual's Kamma, one's own true and binding inheritance. Then, on hearing these words spoken by the Blessed One, the young Brahmin Subha, Todeya's son, said this, while addressing the teacher with his hands clasped together in front of his heart in Anjali. It is excellent, Bhante. It is marvelous, Bhante. The Blessed One has made the Dhamma clear to me in many ways. I feel as though the Blessed One has turned upright what was overturned, revealing what was hidden, by showing the correct path to someone who was lost, much like bringing a lit oil lamp, much like bringing a lit oil lamp into the darkness for all those with eyesight to see. From this day forth, may the Blessed One remember me as one of his lay disciples who has gone for refuge to him until my very last breath. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. May this sutta, as well as the other suttas, really inspire you to live life differently, with more meaning, with more intensity. Intensity as it relates to your authenticity, and not telling yourself lies, because we are expert liars to ourselves first and foremost, in how much we practice, in how much we dedicate ourselves to something we believe in. For that, society is never short of giving us reasons that are copycats. They are fake purposes. It could be your job, it could be your circle of friends, it could be your family members, even your loved ones, your own flesh and blood. I mean, how can that not be noble? Of course, in the eyes of society and the education, this and that, all these are Mara's domain. All these are convincing enough. But whatever it is, the Buddha never said, don't take care of your loved ones, don't do this and this and this. He didn't wash them off as unimportant. No, especially in the capacity as lay people, of lay people. What I'm saying here is your practice has to be priority, but it is through the authenticity of your true practice that your caring of a loved one will really be true caring of a loved one. Your job will really become satisfying, and not how many files you were able to finish, how many tasks you were able to accomplish. Ultimately, it means nothing. In fact, it is still heavy karmically, because There was a time when I used to spend not 40 hours a week. That was in my contract. It was as a school teacher. I would spend over 60, 70 hours. I didn't have a weekend. Despite, in addition to the teaching career, this and that, I was involved in doing this and doing that and related to the school, this, that. And that was fulfilling me, I thought. It was giving me the sense of, yeah, this is a noble person because no other teacher was. Who cares ultimately, as far as my relationship with the Dhamma and living true to my calling? I didn't come here to be a teacher. I didn't come here to teach, biology or this and that. Yeah, I would do that as my job, okay, but the practice had to be number one. This I didn't understand at the time. It never came up because it was satisfying. It's meaningless ultimately. I'm so glad I didn't die at the time. It would have been a wasted life. So all the challenges that we have to overcome, each of us in our own life, ultimately has to be bringing us to authentic practice of the Dhamma. Remember the turtle, the one-eyed turtle. 100 years, once every 100 years, pops its head out of the open ocean, and it so happens to be in the middle of the ocean, that somebody had tossed a one-eyed yoke, the yoke where they put on the oxen, on the ox. Somehow the wooden yoke is floating about in the ocean, and the two meet. It's so rare of an opportunity. This does not mean every one of you or lay people or anyone should go and you have to become a monk. This doesn't mean that either. Being a monk does not guarantee that you're going to be practicing. No. For most people, there's that delusion that that's how a monk is automatically. No, ideally, that is how it's supposed to be. The only reason why one needs to become a bhikkhu or a nun has to be that. Unfortunately, that's not the case. So as a layperson, you can do the practice fully while interacting with the life around you, with your circle of friends, the society, families, loved ones, responsibilities. Lord Buddha did not say relinquish your responsibilities as a layperson. No, but you can bring the practice in there, into that, writing that report, into sitting down with your friends, having a meal, laughing, this and that, but you can bring your sati there. You can look at the attitude. You can practice the Noble Eightfold Path right there. You would be probably practicing the Dhamma more so than that famous monk that you think is doing it. But you might be actually living it in that position of yours. Forget about everyone else. This is your life. This is your practice. Because you are carrying yourself on your own 2 feet. You're breathing through your own lungs, and you're hearing the Dhamma through your own ears. So whatever you carefully pay attention to, apply it by always having within the crosshairs of your life the fact that death is coming. We don't know. Bahya, that's what he said to the Buddha. He says, Bhante, when Lord Buddha refused, told him, now is not the time, Bahya. He had just run over 750 miles cross country in India within a matter of few days. He had reached the Buddha and he's like, Bhante, you got to give me the Dhamma. Please, please, please. To help him settle down the agitation, the impatience, fluctuations in mind. The Buddha said, now is not the time, Bahya. And the third time he asked, he says, Bhante, I don't know whether the Blessed One will be alive. I don't know whether I will be alive until I waited for Lord Buddha to have his alms round completed and eat his meal. By then I might have been dead. So I've wasted another life. And Lord Buddha looked at him and smilingly gave him the shortest, briefest instruction in the suttas. And he was the fastest Bahya to get it. And lo and behold, in less than an hour, maybe less than 10 minutes, after he received the Dhamma, as Lord Buddha continued with his Sangha, he died because a cow came in and gorged him with her horns, and killed him on the spot. He died. That urgency is necessary. No one can give you that. These are just tools. These are just supportive, encouraging words that I'm sharing. The sutta is. But most importantly, your life must be. And that is where we can say it is wise versus unwise. Ignorance is not a thing that you get infected by. It is the daily application of willful ignoring that keeps us in the dark. That is avidya, not knowing the Dhamma through books. No. Wisdom requires action from our part. That is true Kamma. So, before closing, I mentioned how some people would like to know, I've been asked a few times, so this would be a good opportunity to list the types of Kamma just briefly, because this was an extended session. I don't want to dedicate another session just for that. So this will just piggyback off of what we just shared. So 4 classifications of Kamma that is good to know. One has to do with the functioning type of kammas, and this has to do with the reproductive kamma, the thing that gets one to the state of rebirth, like Lord Buddha was explaining here in these examples, 7 examples, or 14, with the counterpart, hell versus heavenly birth, or better human birth versus the bad one. So you have that, and that is the reproductive Janaka Kamma, it's called. And this has a lot to do with the very last thoughts we're dwelling upon as we're about to die. Or even if we don't know we're dying, the very last intense thought, which has emotion attached to it, that will dictate the next birth. That's one. Remember, there's 4 of them. The other one is supportive, or upatambana kamma, and that has to do, it's not as strong as the reproductive kamma that I just mentioned. But nevertheless, this has that beneficial quality, the good circumstances that you would be augmented by, supported by in that birth, now that you're there. Sometimes you would hear or see a dog that is born as a dog. So, Dhammically speaking, that's a bad birth, animal realm. But the dog, this particular dog, has such caring parents, people, humans, who are taking care of the dog, giving it food, making sure that the dog has manicure, pedicure, the best of food. Whereas the neighbor's dog are left on the streets, they can barely find any food. So this is the second, which is the supportive. They're not as strong dictating the birth itself, the type of birth in what realm, as the first is, but this one is the second, which comes in to support. The third one is counteractive, upapidaka kamma. I've made the list here. And these are counteractive kamma elements that come in to disrupt even the janaka of the birth. such as the person is, like I was saying, the fetus comes out, so it's a baby, right? They might be born in a family that is very healthy and wealthy and well-educated, upper echelon of society, but they get sick and die. So this third type of kamma comes in to inhibit, to cut the possibilities for an actual long life to take place, despite the other good situations. You might hear about or read about some person, a prince, a princess, or even a king to be, that from a very young age, like Tutankhamun and his siblings, very top level, and then they die very young, either through actual bad intent, malintent, somebody wanting to cause harm, or it could be physical, not perpetrated by someone per se. And then there's the destructive kamma, which even though it says destructive, the Pali is upaghataka kamma. It can be destructive or obstructive, in a sense, opposing or even neutralizing. It could be one that comes in to even obstruct or neutralize negative kammic impact that could be coming in. So by it being destructive labeled in English, it doesn't mean that it is necessarily the destroying of the good possibilities. It could be destroying of the bad possibilities. That's what I'm trying to say. Where the negativity, like in the case of that child who was going to die in 7 days, he's born in a wealthy family, mom and dad, and they bring the child to Lord Buddha, and the Buddha says, "May you live long," but it doesn't say that to the child, and they panic, and they ask, and the Buddha says, "Because your child will die in 7 days." And they start weeping and crying and beseeching because they had a difficulty to just have the child, and they finally have a child, mother and father. So the Buddha says, in that case, just bring your child and put him in the middle of the Sangha. And he had the monks recite for 7 days straight the Dhamma, the suttas. And Lord Buddha was present most of the time while the chanting was going on. And because of power that generates, the Devas and the Brahma gods were there, present, on their knees in many cases. They were such a powerful, imagine you being that child in the middle of the Sangha. No evil spirit could penetrate because they can't. So after the 7 days, Lord Buddha said, I can't promise you anything because it has to do with the depth and the intensity of the kamma. And but 7 days passed, nothing happened to the child. And the parents were beyond joyful. And then they asked Lord Buddha, how long will our child live? And the Buddha said, actually, initially they had asked, and he said, if he passes the 7-day mark, that means he will live to a long, long life. And he lived over 100. Some texts have said he lived until he was 120. So the obstruction, the destruction was in this case positive towards the negative kamma that was for sure going to happen. But it was an incredible, rare opportunity for this child to be at the time of the Buddha being brought there, and the Sangha, and who knows how many of those monks were in fact arahants. So powerful. So the second category of 4 kamma, these indicate the priority of how, whether they land or not and affect the life or not. So there's that kind of a division also that delineates the kammas from each other, the influences of kamma. So one of them is the heavyweight garuka kamma. These are heavy, as the name denotes, and It could be, if not in that particular lifetime, then for sure in the next one they will manifest, because they're heavy. Now, heavy does not necessarily, again, mean something bad. It could be heavy in its saturation level, if you want to call it that, because someone, it could be bad too, of course, like the case was with Devadatta, who tried to kill the Buddha at least 3 times. And the third time, he rolled a big boulder down in the Ginja peaks in Rajgir. But the boulder did not hit the Buddha, but it was deviated in its impact trajectory, I guess. As it was coming down, however, it hit a smaller rock, which shot from the side, and it went and hit and created this gashing wound in the Buddha's foot. Now, one of the terrible things that happens, which eliminates any possibility for a person to develop in the Dhamma in that particular life, there's matricide, killing one's own mother, killing one's own father, patricide, shedding the blood of an arahant or a Buddha, or killing an arahant. Okay, these are terrible influences and negative. So in the case of Devadatta, for example, he spilled the blood of the Buddha. That's why the impact was brought into that life. That's why he didn't live long after. He had a terrible death. So there's the other one, death proximate, asama kamma, which is, sometimes people say it's a photographic, fast-paced, almost like hitting the forward button on a VCR and watching the scenes of your life pass right in front of you very quickly. So that has to do with the person remembering details right before the moment of death. So if you don't have the ability to watch the mind and calm it down, what it does is it can create certain emotional responses in you. So if you recall, for example, some terrible deeds you've committed in that life and you become remorseful, that's a heavy negative emotion. And if you dwell in that emotion, now you just created the reproductive qualities. The next life to be is going to be, remember, dictated by that state. That's why anybody whose mind is like this at the moment of death, chances are they're going to go into the lower realms. I don't care what they say, how far they've gone into meditation while they're alive, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. What their students might think, oh, the mind has to be pristine, clear, lucid, tranquil, especially in that moment. So, and then there's the habitual or achinna kamma. This is what you normally habitually think about during your life. If you think everyone's out to get you, if you think that everybody mistreats you, if you think, so that creates some sense of resentment, anger. So if that's the normal way of thinking, or if you look at that, down at yourself with inferiority conceit and say, I'm the worst, that is your narrative. That's also going to impact at the moment of death what happens to you and where you end up. Because that's not a pleasant heavenly state to be in, right? When you're pushing yourself down. That's why when we practice metta, that's what we're doing. You're trying to create that situation in you. You're trying to make that into your habitual way of thinking and feeling. And then there's the cumulative katattha kamma, which is what we understand as kamma, the accumulated things that were done by you. That's the accumulation of kamma. So in general terms. And the other four categories of Kamma, more, if you notice, it's like subgrouping, more specific, because these questions come up, like, what about this? What about that? Could that be Kamma? Could that be what influence? So I'm trying to address that briefly as best as I can. The other four Kamma according to the operation or temporal scale, or the duration. How long does it take, let's say, for a Kamma to take place? There are certain kammic actions that are effective immediately. They don't take much time, not just in the life, but they're very immediate. And there's the second one, which is subsequently effective Kamma. The Abhidhamma gets into more details, but I don't like dabbling with the Abhidhamma because, well, for one, Lord Buddha never taught it. Not many people think that, but history proves it, and it was never part of the first council, where the Dhamma was codified, the suttas were put together. But it has some valuable elements here and there, I guess. The next one is the indefinitely effective Kamma, things that could happen or might not. And then there's the ineffective Kamma, things that will not happen. Okay? So usually the intensity of emotion or intensity of intentionality attached to the action itself designates the priorityness of its manifestation. That's a mouthful, but just, the intention is very important to consider. And then lastly, the four groupings according to the plane of existence or realm that they take us to. This is simpler to remember. One is the akusala kamma, which cannot take you to heavenly realms. So these will take you to the lower realms. They don't even bring you to human realm. So if you're a person, the person is directed towards doing things that are unwholesome. Hell realms, asura realms, animal realms, and peta, or miserable ghost realms, which is a most dreadful place to be. Very sticky, because beings who are born there, they have, it's torture, because they see human beings, they see some of the other realms that are close by, but they can never penetrate fully. They can never benefit from that. They are in pain because they're hungry, they're thirsty, they can't get a moment's sleep, they're always terrorized. They're always afraid that they will drop and sink into the hell realms where they usually come up from. They graduate from hell realms into Peta realms. That's why they are the most accepting of our merits, because they are almost on the cusp of improving their status. So it's a terrible place. Not that the others aren't. Hell realms, asura realms, demonic realms, and animal realms, and the petas, of course. So akusala kamma takes the person there. Now the other three out of the four are all wholesome kammas, kusala kammas, and those have to do with the sensual realms, human beings, or the realm where we occupy, and all other human-like forms in existence, other realms, other planets, what people call extraterrestrials, etc. They also fall into the same category of humans. They might be more evolved, usually they are, than us. Nevertheless, in order for us to be reborn into a human realm in any part of the universe, you need to have committed wholesome kamma, okay? Not unwholesome kamma. For that reason, I mentioned the other day how majority of the population, human population of this planet, will not even be humans in their next birth for a very long time. Again, refer back to the Samyutta Nikaya as an example. How rare it is, Lord Buddha says, to be born a human. That's how rare. So, and then the other level of wholesome or Kusala Kamma is the one that allows, works towards helping the person to be born in the fine material realms, the Rupa Lokas. These are Brahma realms. And then there's the highest of the 31 realms. Those are the Arupa realms. So Kamma influences all these. So again, it has everything to do with how the person thinks and ponders on routinely, habitually. Otherwise, no miracle is going to happen at the end of your life. Okay, it's not a button that you hit and all of a sudden this door opens versus that one. No. Okay, so I know we went a little bit over today, but it's a, as you agree, it's a very important topic and pertinent to all of us. So I will pause here finally and see if there are any questions. Okay, in that case, let us transfer some merits. Bring to mind all those beings uh, that people you know who need help, people who you might have heard about or know they have died recently, those who are in pain, those who are struggling with some ailment, sickness, difficulty in life, as well as those beings, especially the devas and nagas and yakhas and brahmas and all the others that I mentioned, including especially the petas. Bring them to mind and share the merits that you yourselves have gained from listening to the Dhamma. Even listening to the Dhamma carefully can do wonders. Many, many, many lives have changed simply by listening to the Dhamma being taught by the Buddha. Many became arahants. Arahants, people like you and I. So do not minimize the importance of hearing intently the Dhamma. And there are other beings who wish they were you. So with them, you are sharing these merits, including the greatest of gods. They envy you often because they are not inundated by the pleasure-filled worlds. You are not inundated as they are experiencing the joys of pleasure, which blocks the clear understanding of Dhamma, which you have the opportunity to listen and benefit from. And that's what you're also sharing with them. So with those thoughts in your heart, Akasatha chabo mata devanaga mahidika punyantanga ditva chinam rakhantu loka sasana. Akasatha chabo mata deva mahidika punyantanga ditva chirang rakhantu desana. Akasatha chabo mata devanaga mahidika punyantanga ditva chirang rakhantu mam paranti. Sadhu, sadhu. May pain be reduced in the hearts, bodies, and minds and lives of people, of beings who are in pain. May there be harmony. May there be joy. May there be understanding and wisdom in individuals and communities and families. And may the Dhamma's light continue burning bright in your lives, in your practice, and in the world of all sentient beings. And may you soon come to taste the Magga Phala Nibbana Supreme that the Buddha entrusted us with. To taste, to experience yourself directly, personally, in your this very life. Until next time, Sukhi Hot. Mm.